Hello everyone, and welcome to part 3 of handling checkout with Deno, Fresh, and Stripe. In last part, we wrapped up the cart system, and in this one we'll integrate our app with Stripe and allow users to check out and pay. First thing we'll need is to get our Stripe API key. You can find yours in the Stripe dashboard. If you don't already have an account, you can create a free Stripe account. In the developers section, we have the API keys and our private secret key. So that's what we'll be using to communicate with Stripe. So you should copy that one. In our project, we'll also create a .m file to store our environment variables, which will contain our Stripe API key. So I'll create a variable called Stripe secret and simply replace change me with your Stripe API key. We also need to load the .m variable in our project, which we can do in the dev.typescript file by importing the load module. We'll also need the Stripe SDK in our project. So if we head to the import_map.json, at the end, we can add the Stripe SDK to our project. Next, we'll create a new file under the utils folder called stripe.typescript. This will create our Stripe client. We'll first import Stripe, and we'll also export a constant called Stripe, which will create a new client using our Stripe secret key from our environment. With all this setup done, we're ready to make use of Stripe in our project. We'll first create a checkout route, which will deal with creating a checkout session for us. This route won't return any page component. It'll only have a handler that handles post requests. So let's create a file under routes called checkout.tsx. We'll import fresh handlers as well as the cart item interface and our Stripe client from our utils folder. We can now export a handler that handles post methods. Our handler expects that the data was sent by form, so we'll get the form data from the request. Our cart information will be stored in an input called data, so we'll retrieve that as a string and try and parse that form data into a list of cart items. We'll then use the Stripe client to create a checkout session. We'll pass it the line items value by mapping over the cart items, and for each item, we'll create the price data and quantity associated to it. We need to make sure for the unit amount that we're multiplying by 100, since Stripe expects everything to be in cents and not dollars. We'll use the mode as payment as opposed to subscription. So in our case, it's a one-time payment only. And we'll also need a success and cancel URL. For the success URL, I'm simply redirecting to our homepage, and for the cancel URL, I am redirecting to the cart page. This will all return a URL, the checkout URL. So we'll need to redirect the user to that URL. So our route is ready. We now need to create the form and send it to this route. We'll do this in our cart component. If we head over to our under islands cart.tsx file, at the bottom, we currently have a button called checkout, which does nothing. So let's change that so that when we click it, it sends our cart data to the checkout route. We'll first create a new function called onCheckout. We'll create the form inside of this function since we don't really want a UI form field. We'll set the method to post as well as the action to the checkout route, since we want to make sure that when the form is submitted, it will send it to our newly created route. We then create an input field. We set its type to hidden and its name to data, which is what checkout expects. Its value will be the stringified value of our cart list. We then append this input to our form and as well to our body. I've decided to clear the cart here for simplicity. A better way to do this would be to have a specific parameter or URL to represent when checkout was successful versus when it was not. In our current way of doing things, if we look at our success URL, nothing tells the homepage that payment was successful. So whenever we cancel, we'll head back to our cart, but we'll also lose everything in our cart. And last thing we need is to call the submit on our form. All that's left is to use that on click for our checkout button. So we can call on checkout and hit save. And that's all we really need to integrate payment with Stripe. So let's try it out. So in our app, I'm at the homepage. Let's add a few more items to our cart. Head to our cart. Now if we click on the checkout, it should redirect us to the Stripe checkout session. We have our total. We have different items with their quantities. For email, we can enter anything. And for payment, for the card information, we'll just have a 4 followed by 1s. Doesn't matter for the rest. And now we can click pay. And it should successfully redirect us to our homepage. Now, if we want to take a look at the issue with how we're clearing our cart, if we add items to it, click checkout, and then cancel, we end up losing everything in our cart. So a better way of doing that would be to have a parameter when we redirect to home telling us payment was successful, checkout session was successful, and then we'll clear based off of that parameter. But for the concept of just showing how to use Stripe with Fresh, this pretty much does it. So this completes this series. Thanks a lot for watching and have a good day. Bye.